What up, heavy mommies, and welcome to the Cosmic Perspective. On today's episode, it's the quarantine episode. Y'all knew it was coming. There's no way I could ignore an elephant this big, and sorry it took me a couple of weeks to drop an episode. I have another episode with my buddy Marcus, who I'm very much looking forward to releasing that one. But seeing as we're in a quarantine, and getting guests is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. I personally prefer in person. I don't really like doing the Skype thing, and I haven't fully figured out how to record that yet. So just in terms of technologically, for me to get it done as well as I could make it, I want the audio quality to still be good, and that presents its own challenge. But in order to try to break up the monotony of me constantly doing solo episodes for you all, which I know that you all love, but, I wanted to make sure that I still sprinkle in some guests, and I live with Joey, so I can do a podcast with him without breaking the quarantine rules. But I want to talk about the quarantine. I do. I want to kind of start off with the quarantine here, and then I have some other things to talk about that hopefully can end this thing on a lighter note. And I'm going to try my best to stay positive in the coronavirus situation, because I think there's enough negativity going around that we don't need any more than that. But that being said, I want to avoid the tone deaf aspect of like what the celebrities have been doing, which is where, it's so easy to sit in your fucking mansion when people don't know where their next paycheck's coming from. So, I want to be kind of mindful of both things here, because let's talk about the reality of the situation. So with this coronavirus, obviously total economic collapse. I mean, realistically, there are many jobs that are never going to come back. There are many restaurants that are unlikely to be able to stay operational without major help. And the help that was given is really for big corporations, and it's really just a massive transfer of wealth to the 1%. So that bill is not going to help you. It's not. One $1,200 check that you might get or might not, because you might not qualify. It's means tested. It's really a tax advance on your taxes for next year. Like, it's everything about it is like, all right, fine, we'll give you $1,200, but only if we give $4 trillion for Wall Street and all big corporations, which don't really need it. We want almost no oversight. We want the ability to have the oversight be eliminated easily. We want them to easily be able to go back on the few limitations we're going to place on the money. And then I guess we'll give you a $1,200 kind of tax credit situation that's going to affect your next tax refund. Like, that's literally the only way that neoliberals and the political class and the 1% and, all those people in the hierarchy of the class system here in America, the only way that they'll even give you $1,200 is if it comes with an insane amount of strings attached for you and none for their $4 trillion of discretionary spending for Steve Mnuchin to do, who, by the way, foreclosed on like old ladies illegally, and then Kamala Harris, cop, did not prosecute him. So, I'm not going to... Like I said, I'm going to try to keep this mostly positive, but I do want to lay out the reality of the situation so that you understand that this is robbery. This is fucking highway robbery, dude. And this is like in the middle of the day robbery where the police are in on it and they're like, nah, I'm not stopping him. He can just loot the treasury. It's fine. So, this situation, it's a gross injustice of inequality. And we already had such like insane inequality of wealth in America. And I just don't understand, like, what do these greedy motherfuckers need, dude? Like, what else is left to take, bro? You got everything. Everyone's got crumbs. We're starving. People don't even have $500 emergency, and now they really don't. What more do you want? Do you want us to storm the Bastille? Like, do you want heads rolling on the floor? Because that's what's going to end up happening. And I don't want that to happen, Like, I want a revolution politically, but not physically. I don't actually want violence, I just want us to oust corrupt motherfuckers from government and put in good people. That's all I want. I think it's pretty simple. And we've shown that we can do it totally peacefully. We can just take back certain districts. We can take back certain seats in Congress. It can be done. You know, we have people in Congress now that actually represent people. Now, do they have enough power yet? No, but they're there. And that's a step in the right direction, right? So we just need to replicate that a few more times. It's easier to get people in Congress with less money than it is to try to get the president. And as of the time that I'm recording this, Bernie has officially dropped out. I'm deeply saddened by that because Joe Biden ain't it. He ain't it. And anybody who is saying vote blue no matter who, vote blue no matter who, like, dude, I'm sorry, but the guy's basically a Republican. He's just conservative light. I mean, and that's what most, liberal Democrats are, is like conservative light. They're really like the same party, but just not as racist, just not as terrible, but also still bad, So the whole thing's very frustrating. We have no opposition party. It's literally like we have the people who are just blatantly just robbing the country blind for corporate welfare, being the Republicans. And then you have the people who pay lip service to good causes, but then do literally nothing, and almost seems like they're like losing on purpose. Like, it's so weird. It seems like, how can you be so inept, and how could you choose so many bad political moves that always end up putting you in a spot where you're going to lose? Like, I just don't get it. I really don't understand the Democrats. I just don't get it. I hate the party. I hate the party. Never been a part of it. Never been a Democrat in my life. I've always been an independent. And although I am left-leaning, obviously, and I identify with specific policies that are supposedly represented by the Democrats, they're not, though. So we have a party that just openly fucking sucks. Then we got a party that like pretends to not suck, but then not only sucks, but like sucks at politics. Like, literally it's just not good. Like, if they were playing chess, they'd lose every time. You know what I mean? Like, they literally like, I'll sacrifice the queen for this pawn. Like, what? Why are you doing that? You're an idiot. But that's what the fucking party is. They're like, let's put up this half-brained, sunsetting Republican light who literally has sexual assault allegations against him. And let's put it up against dementia-ridden Donald Trump, who barely can form a thought either, but yet somehow is like more witty when he's in it than Joe is. And that's the thing. It's like Joe's mind is like gone, dude. Joe's mind, like, because I've watched videos from him from like 4 years ago. It really is genuinely like a different Joe. Like, he was way more like, if the Joe from 4 years ago was running now, I would still not vote for him, but I would feel more confident, like, well, at least he's competent, But like, I don't even feel like Joe's competent. That being said, he's still obviously objectively better than Trump, but not that much better. Like, his policies, he's not even willing to go into Medicare for all during a fucking pandemic. He said he'd veto it. What? Dude. And then, like, you can keep your health care if you want it, except if you're one of the 10 million people who filed for unemployment in the last 2 weeks. Then you're just fucked. Good luck paying the COBRA prices, which are insane. And for those who don't know, COBRA is kind of like a transitionary period from when you lose your health insurance from your job and you're able to keep paying for some sort of coverage for like a period of time. I don't know if it's a few months or whatever. And it's generally just very expensive. Not to mention insurance companies are already saying they're going to hike up premiums by 40% next year. So like, the whole thing is just, I mean, he just has bad political instincts. And there are so many clips of him saying, I tried to pimp myself out. I tried to whore myself out to the rich guys, and they told me no. Like, he literally is like, he openly like was like, I tried to sell out. So that's the fucking candidate that the Democrats have put up. And it was because they couldn't get any of the other candidates that they really wanted through. Like, they really wanted Pete Buttigieg, or they really wanted Amy Klobuchar. They were just trying to make it happen. They're like propping up mainstream media to just be like, yes, please, Amy, yes, save us. Boo, boo, boo. But like, meanwhile, fucking Joe was the only one who like had any chance of like winning a couple states and versus Bernie. And the second they realized, dude, no one's going to be able to beat Bernie, they literally, Obama made phone calls and said, bro, you got to drop out. You got to endorse Joe. And so one thing that I really want to emphasize on this, and I don't want to spend too much more time on the politics aspect of this, but is that It took the entire establishment coordinating, dropping out candidates left and right, endorsing, getting every endorsement in the book, voter suppression like crazy, closing polls, having people vote during the pandemic. All these things they tried to do, and it did win. It was enough, but it took that. It took that to win. That means that they are fucking losing, dude. That you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You really can't. I think Bernie has honestly opened some things up in a way that, I'm sorry, we're not going back. Like it or not, even though these neoliberals pretend like Medicare for All is a political loser, and by the way, it means political loser for their money, political loser for the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies that are going to pay for their campaigns. That lie is gone because, one, before this pandemic, Medicare for All was overwhelmingly popular in all of the exit polls. And even it's overwhelmingly popular, not necessarily as big of a lead, but it is even in Republican circles. Like more Republicans support it than don't. So, that one's a little closer to like 50-something to 40-something. Whereas like Medicare for All with Democrats in various states has been as high as like 70%, in favor. So clearly the policy is overwhelmingly popular. And I think the need for having a universal healthcare system has been greatly emphasized in this circumstance where, you lose your job, you lose your health care, but you just lost your health care in the middle of a pandemic. So not only did you lose your source of income, but you lost your sense of security of if you're sick, that you can even go to the doctor, which is only going to further exacerbate the virus spread because people who are sick, who need the attention, are not going to go get it. And then the people who do get the attention and they do get the help, they're going to then go bankrupt because they can't afford the cost of treating it or having a ventilator or any of these other things. So it's like, this is a moment for us as a country to come to grips with the reality that universal healthcare is an existential threat to our country because you are only as safe as your sickest neighbor. You really are. And if we had universal healthcare, does it stop the virus? No. Does it solve the virus alone? No. But what it does do is it guarantees that people are not going to economically be ruined or simply die from not being able to get the care because they can't afford it. So I think either one of those things has obviously been demonstrated as hugely important. And I think we've come to the conclusion as a society that it's clear that we need to join the rest of the countries in the world that have already done it. I love when people try to tell me like, oh, you couldn't do that here in America. And I was like, that's stupid. It already exists. Clearly we could do it here. It's, do we want to? Do we have the political will? So the coronavirus, it's crazy. There have been an insane amount of deaths already. We've already had like 4 9/11s as of the time of recording this, which is just crazy to me to even think about. And we're likely to have potentially 100,000, 200,000 deaths. And this is all due to the incompetence of Trump. Trump literally did nothing about it for months, even though he knew and was warned that we needed to start ramping up production for these things. We had people literally like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago selling ventilators overseas from companies that exist in America when we're short on the supply. I mean, like, the shit's insane. And not to mention, the Defense Production Act is literally designed for this exact circumstance. It's like the most American shit of all time. This shit was designed in a time of war where we have the ability to command our existing infrastructure of manufacturing in America to manufacture the things needed for a time of a crisis. And it's not like these companies aren't getting paid to do this. We're still going to pay them well to make sure that they do this, but we need them to, instead of making a bunch of fucking pencils, we need them to start making some ventilators shit. Horrible example because they're not related, but you get what I'm saying. So Trump is to blame on the extent of the damage that is going to be caused by this. Obviously, he didn't cause the virus, but he is making it worse objectively in almost every way. Then you got Joe Biden, who's not even being in opposition right now, just being like, Medicare for all wouldn't help at all. Meanwhile, he forgets where he is in the middle of the interview. He literally had to have his wife, like, He had to have his wife talk for him for like the first 2.5 minutes of his live stream because he just can't get through a sentence, dude. It's embarrassing. And the fact that people are hiding this or trying to hide it under the fact that like, oh, well, he had a stutter, so that's why. Like, dude, that's actually offensive to people who really like, and I know he had a stutter, but it's offensive to people who really have a stutter and really struggle with it because he did actually overcome his stutter, okay? This is a guy who 4 years ago, you wouldn't be saying the same things you're saying now. It's just objectively true that he's just getting old. It's fine. Everybody gets old. I have 2 grandmas with dementia, okay? The shit's close to me. I recognize it. I've seen it before. I know what it looks like. He literally looks like my grandma's, honestly. He looks like my grandma's in that circumstance where, you know, he gets a little lost. He doesn't really know where he is. And I just think to hide that glaringly obvious weakness, not to mention they just did a poll of like people who are excited, like they wanted to poll the level of excitement for him, you know, enthusiasm, and he polled lower than Hillary Clinton at the same stage. Dude, Hillary Clinton, as much as I didn't like her, was a better candidate than him, and she still lost. So I don't know. I mean, I think they just want Trump to win. I don't think they even want Joe Biden to win. I think there's power in being the opposition party. But yeah, so anyway, I got all that off my chest. I wanted to complain about those things because I do think that, like, you know, when Joe loses, and here's the thing, if it were to happen today, I think Joe would lose. In the future, it's hard to say. Some shit could go really south during this pandemic, and it's possible that actually could, despite Joe being the worst candidate of all time, he might still win because Trump fucked up the pandemic so bad and we're in total economic collapse. That might be the only thing that could get Joe over the finish line. Otherwise, I don't know. He just ain't it. But on the other hand, I do want to talk about some of the positive aspects of this. So let's shift into a more positive gear here because I definitely don't want to just depress you guys. This shit's depressing enough, and being trapped in your house and then fucking just listening to somebody break down how terrible everything is at the moment is not fun either. So one thing that I think is really exciting about this, though, is that this does, for the people who aren't immediately panicked about where their next meal is coming from, it gives them a chance to reflect. And even for the people who are panicking about where their next meal is coming from, like, they're not allowed to go outside. You know, they're not allowed to go work. So you still have this time to reflect and really think about what's important to you. And I think that this is going to be a reframing of society. You know, can we go back to any sense of what we deemed normal before? No, we can't. I just don't think that there is a normal anymore. I think we are now in uncharted territory. And this is unprecedented in terms of the way that it shined the light on how hollowed out our country has gotten. You know, what we stand for, what we spend our time on, what we invest our emotion and energy into, and our realization that our government doesn't have our back. And I want to make a big distinction in this because some people will use this as an example of like, see, government never works, private sector all day. And I'm sorry for all the Southern people that I always give conservatives the Southern voice, but it's just too easy of a trope. But you know, it's frustrating because government could work properly. It totally could. It's not, government isn't inherently a failure. You know what I mean? Government's a failure when you don't properly staff it and you don't properly allocate the money. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And when you don't base it off of actual merit and it's all just like, I know a guy, we could use them for the government contract. You know, like, it's the grease into the hands and the backroom deals and all that. That's what makes government not work. But, or defunding certain things until it fails. You know, the Republicans love that. That's their favorite thing, is the means testing, defund it, make it not work, make it not have the resources it needs to do the job it was set out to do, and then claim it was a failure so that you can cut it. I mean, that's literally like Republican playbook 101. And the Democrats like to do means testing too. So, you know, they're not innocent either. But I think what it's proven is that if we did actually have a government that was designed a little bit more effectively and was funded properly in the right areas, that we could have made this situation a lot better. South Korea is a prime example. I know when I talked with Eric, we talked about how China had these abilities as like a, being kind of a dictatorship, that they could do some things against the virus in a way that we couldn't. And that was very early on in the virus at the time. And the truth is that South Korea is actually the perfect model, because South Korea is a democratic country that has handled it perfectly. They had the drive-in tests, they've quarantined well, they've provided enough assistance for their citizens, and they are a model that shows that you can have a completely democratically elected country and still take care of your citizens and do it in the proper way. You just need to have good government. You just need to have a government that actually works for the people, and a key part to that is having your politicians actually represent you and be beholden to you and not beholden to corporations. And they just seem to have a better system over there. And size of country to me doesn't matter, because every government should be scalable the way that it's designed. And if you have a good government, it wouldn't matter how big your country is. You would still be able to do it. It adds more complications, but it's not, an unsolvable problem. So coronavirus has been crazy. I am blessed to be in a job that is considered an essential service. And I am blessed to still be getting paid, and I actually do have to go into work. But I don't work every day or anything like that, which is nice. Currently I'm working 2 days a week, and it's been interesting. It's been interesting because, for a while, at first I was still working mostly normal. I worked like 4 days a week, for a couple weeks, while we were starting to go through kind of like our lockdown. And it was normal. It was still like normal work. Work itself was strange because you had that kind of going on in the background, and that was affecting everything that was happening at the time. And we at the time were scrambling for some crazy orders that were meant to give us some revenue in the meantime, which was nice. But it's been crazy, and there's a lot of companies in our particular market that are just not going to be able to survive this, and that's unfortunate because it's not their fault. It's just the nature of the business. It's in events. It's in having people get together, which is something that we literally cannot do right now. And those companies don't deserve to go out of business just because we temporarily, for just a few, for several months, are going to have to not be able to get together in large gatherings. I think that's really frustrating, that there's a lot of companies that if the government just covered these people's payroll and told them, hey, don't work, we'll cover your payroll until we figure this out. And then, then the doors can just come back on, and you can just turn the lights back on and open the doors again the second it's safe to do it again, just by backing it. And, we'll pay for it on the back end later, but I'd rather us keep a bunch of companies afloat to some degree. And, especially ones that we're operating fine up until this moment that we told them they're not allowed to do their kind of business. I just think it's frustrating that we're willing to bail out all these corporations, but we're not willing to bail out, small business owners or regular people. But I think it's a chance for us to truly recontextualize and reprioritize what is important to us as a country, and what is important to us of what government's role should be. Because what is government for? What are taxes for, if not to take care of citizens in a fucking crisis? Are you kidding me? That should be the main reason we have a government, is for this shit. This, and then roads and infrastructure, transportation, public transportation, parks, natural preserves, all that, right? Those are the big structural shit. That's what we want the government for. We don't want the government telling me I can't take a drug, that I can't alter my consciousness with a plant, or that I'm not allowed to have an abortion if I don't want a child and I accidentally got knocked up. I just think that's not what we want government to be involved in. What we want government to be involved in is making sure I have health care and that it's free at the point of service and I pay for it through taxes, that I can, go to parks, that I have public transportation that can get me places that I want to go, That's what I want government for. And I don't think it's unreasonable to want government for that stuff. You want it for security. You want it for certain services and certain things that it can provide. And then there are other things that by all means we want the free market system to make the widgets and consumer goods and whatever. But there are certain things that just are not consumer goods. They just inherently are different. And I think that this is going to be a moment that's going to radicalize a lot of people, and hopefully radicalize them in a good way, not in a violent way, but in like a good way in the sense that, they wake up to the reality of the injustice of the American system. And, America does a lot of things right, and as a country, and America does a lot of things wrong as a country. And I think as long as we're honest about the things that they're doing right and the things that they're doing wrong, and maybe the reasons why, and we're adding nuance to why that might be the case, instead of just saying government bad, we acknowledge that, oh, this particular part of the government's bad because we didn't properly fund it and we didn't hire the right people. And, let's just have some nuance to things, because I think too often people like to throw out the baby with the bathwater because it matches their ideology. But they don't realize that there are actually some really good things that could come of that thing. Just because it wasn't implemented well in that circumstance doesn't mean that it couldn't be implemented well with other variables and other things that are changed. So I think this is a moment for us to figure out what's important to us individually, but also collectively as a society. What are you all doing during this quarantine? What are you doing? I find that I've been doing a lot of meditating, honestly, which has been good. And I've actually been painting a little bit. Mary's had me painting, my girlfriend. I just say her name, like people know. I don't think I've ever said her name on here. But yeah, so I've been painting with her, and that's been really fun. Every time I paint, in the middle of it, I'm like, fuck, how do I fix this? But then at the end, over time, I paint over things, I blend things, and somehow I make it look like it looks good. I don't know. It looks relatively good. I mean, I don't think I'm an amazing painter or anything, but surprisingly, I can figure my way out, which has been really fun. It's been a really rewarding process, really cathartic. I've also been playing a ton of Animal Crossing. Yo, shout out to Animal Crossing New Horizons. Goddamn, this is the best Animal Crossing of all time. Easily. Like, hands down, it's not even close. The things that you can do in it are awesome. I have not fully paid off my houses, my house or, anything major yet. But I have been able to do a bunch of stuff. I've been building bridges all around my island. And it's been so fun. I mean, it really, like, the creativity in it, spoiler alert for some people, but when you get through, I don't know if it's like when you pay off your house or something, eventually you get these like permits so that you can make like terrain changes. You can build out rivers and ponds. You can create elevation. You can change the terrain from grass to dirt to whatever. And it's really cool. I think it's one of the neater features of the new game, and I really enjoy the fact that it's going to allow people to completely recreate the island. So you're given one of like 4 layouts that you can pick at the very beginning of the game, but by the end of it, once you have that permit, you can do whatever the fuck you want. It takes time, and you might have to move some buildings and stuff, and that costs money, but it's really cool that you can do that. And I'm very excited to see what people, the internet's amazing and the people's creativity is infinite. So I really look forward to seeing what people's islands look like in like a few months, where a lot of people have then beaten the game, There's no really beating it. You can kind of play that game forever. But once you paid off those things and you've been given those tools, what people can come up with, I think it'll be really exciting to see. And it's a really fun, chill game. It's like the perfect game to play during the quarantine, honestly. I've also been playing some Halo, sometimes with Mary. We like to play co-op together on the campaigns. We're still currently in Halo 2 at the moment. She's never played any of them, so it's been really fun having her go through and play it. And playing on the Master Chief Collection's a lot of fun, because Halo 2 specifically was remastered. God damn, it looks pretty fucking good. So that's been a lot of fun. Been doing that. I have not been reading as much as I would like to. I feel like this is also a good opportunity to really read some good books. But I've always just been spending it watching stuff more than reading, and or playing the video games. Playing the video games as if I'm like a fucking old man. I remember back with the video games, and I was playing them, and they were a lot of fun. Back when they were side scrollers. I'm fucking stupid. I don't know why you listen to this podcast. So I've been doing that, but I've actually been writing again, which has been awesome. I for a long time I just wasn't writing in it, and it just was really, I just didn't put it as a priority. You know, I had a lot of other things to do that were still productive things to do. It wasn't even necessarily like I was just like fucking around or not doing things, but I now that I have more time, I've been spending some time on it. So I've been writing a little bit, and working on a new show with one of my friends from college, and we've already written scripts together. So, you know, we kind of already have somewhat of a flow that we've figured out, and it's been a lot of fun. I've really just learned to enjoy the creative process and just enjoy making things. Matt was talking about that actually the other day. And he was saying you know, the best thing is the high after, you know, the high that you get after you've like created something. Like once you're done, you know, it's fun in the moment too, when you're creating some stuff. And then afterwards you feel so accomplished. You're like, yeah, that was good. Like I used my imagination. I came up with some cool things. I made some plot ideas or some characters, and, you know, you tap into a part of your brain that I think is just it's a good part to tap into, especially frequently. And I've been enjoying that. I've been enjoying retapping into that. And so now I got a lot more time. You know, I'm only working 2 days a week. So I have a lot of time to really focus on these other creative things that maybe I didn't have as much time to do. You know, I have enough time to do this podcast now. I really do. I've had enough time, even when I was working my normal hours. I have enough time to do this podcast. But I didn't always have enough time to do that many more things on top of it. And I've historically done too many things at once. I've historically, like, I'm doing the podcast. I want to shoot videos. You know, like the docuseries, I still want to do it. That hasn't gone away from me. Obviously it's a little bit harder with quarantine, but you know, I want to do that. I've always wanted to learn music and make music. And so I've had phases of making music. And just all these different things. I like drawing. I like messing around the iPad with Procreate. I like painting. You know, I like doing all these, you know, creative artistic endeavors, but I can't genuinely spend the proper amount of time on all of those tasks if I'm doing all of them. But if I choose to do a few of them and really focus on those things, I can really get somewhere with that. And so I think this is where this gives me an opportunity to maybe add another task into that juggling that I'm doing, while also still trying to have a life too. I'm trying to have a personal life, trying to maintain a relationship. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not overworking myself, because I've also historically burnt myself out in the past a lot. And it's been really cool to see that I've learned actually from a lot of these lessons. I genuinely have learned lessons from this shit, and I don't burn myself out as much. I don't overload myself with as many tasks. My inclination is still like, oh, but I want to do this and I want to do this. It's still there. It's in my personality, but I'm forcing myself to stay disciplined and focus on the things that I realistically can do, and that is worth putting my time and effort into now, knowing that eventually I might be able to get to some of those other things. You know, you only have so many hours in the day. I can only spend so much time doing stuff. So it's important for me to make sure that when I'm doing that, I'm doing it to some degree of balance. And I encourage anybody who has this extra time and is not completely in an existential crisis. And I know that unfortunately there's just too many Americans that are in that situation. So I do not blame you if you don't have the ability to pick up new skills, or even if just the anxiety of the pandemic is freaking you out. You know, several nights this past week, not prompted at all, I've had like just a lot of anxiety going to sleep, where it's just, I feel it in my chest, and it's not coming. Like, I'm not even thinking about the pandemic. I'm not thinking about anything. All of a sudden it's just like I just have to like take a deep breath, and it's not It's not like a full-on panic attack or anything. And all things considered, I'm actually in a pretty good position. Not a perfect one. The longer this pandemic goes on, the greater the uncertainty becomes for even my company, as well as we're trying to handle this, and as well as we're able to handle it given the circumstances. If this goes on too long, it's enough to kill any business, no matter how well prepared they are. So, all things considered, I actually am in a pretty good situation. I'm very grateful for it. And I'm still getting paid, which is awesome. And I genuinely feel like the company cares about all of us as workers. I feel like my bosses care about us and our well-being. It's really nice to be a part of a company that genuinely cares about its people, and it shows you that companies can do it, but it has to come from leadership. And luckily, the leadership of my company actually cares about the human being element of people. We're not just productive workers. What a crazy concept. And so it's given me a lot of security in a time of great insecurity for the country. And so I shouldn't feel as anxious as I felt in those moments, and yet it still happens to me. So I fully understand that this is a mental health thing, and you need to take care of yourself and don't feel like you need to do anything. But if you do want to do something, or if you've always wanted to pick something up, especially something that's a passion of yours, now's the time to do it. And don't feel obligated to do it all the time, but you got more time than you normally do, and better you do that, especially if it's something you actually like, than to just spend it watching Tiger King, which, by the way, I have not watched it, so I can't comment on it. I just know the memes, But yeah, so I think it's really important for people to just like take your time, take care of yourself mentally, try to stay as positive as you can, do whatever you can to survive. Like I don't even know what to tell people, because it's like, don't go to work. You're not supposed to. Don't go to work. But also, how are you supposed to eat if you don't have money? And the fact that we're not going to just help people in the circumstance, it's still just mind blowing to me that such a failure of our government. And it really comes from just not having an opposition party. It'd be one thing if the Democrats actually was like a left party and they really like fought for left ideas. They don't fucking do that. They capitulate every time that they can to appease their donors so that they don't get, piss them off and lose funding. More and more, I'm beginning to think that the donors, it's not necessarily that the Democrats themselves want to lose, but I think, although some of them might, but I think it's that the donors pay them and they kind of hold their feet to the fire in certain positions, which destine them to lose because they're just losing positions, but they don't want to upset the donors and lose the funding. And so then they have to hold weak positions and look extremely hypocritical all the time, which inevitably leads them to losing. I sound like I'm fucking slurring, which inevitably leads them to losing. And the donors are okay with that, because the Republicans will give even more benefits in their pocket. Meanwhile, the Democrats will still give them some benefits. It just won't be as good as the Republicans in terms of the corporate welfare and the bailouts and all that. So I don't know. We don't have an opposition party. We just need an opposition party. But I don't think a third party just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I love the idea of it. I really do. But it's just, there's too many institutional biases against a third party at the moment. And so we kind of just have to take over the Democratic Party. And the truth is that there are plenty of people in the Democratic Party who, if you showed them that these ideas are successful and popular, and they didn't come from an old Jewish man, which apparently just was the wrong package for people, which I think is stupid that matters at all, but it does. You get it in a young woman saying the same shit like AOC, and all of a sudden, yes, queen, yes, slay queen, yes. Like, when you get that shit, okay, whatever. I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm more principled than that. I'm not going to look at just the aesthetics. I don't care. I care about your policy ideas. I love Bernie and I love what he represents, but like, really, I loved Bernie's ideas. I love Bernie's policies. I mean, ultimately, he's not a cult leader. I think it's really dumb when people try to like compare people who support him to Trump, because people don't defend Bernie because because he's just Bernie. You know, people defend Bernie because he's principled and he's been consistent on specific issues that we all agree on. You know, it's way different than people who defend Trump no matter what the fuck he does. Like, it's different. And you might have some people that are to, like, you know, the left-wing equivalent, but even so, the left-wing equivalent is for healthcare. It's for ending wars. It's, you know, it's just not the same thing. It's not, you know, close the borders, build a wall. It's, you know, it's just a false equivalency. It's just not the same. It's the horseshoe theory. You know, it just, to me, it's just an attempt to discredit the movement from people who stand to lose something by us gaining power. It just is what it is. I think it's important for us to make sure that we more intensely go for means of actually acquiring true power in government, and doing it in a way that does not forfeit our values, does not forfeit what we stand for, but does it aggressively. You know, I listen to Michael Brooks sometimes, and he talks about needing to have this spiritual Machiavellian like attitude towards things. And I think it's really, I think it's true. I think you have to play the political game. You know, I think when you have the ideas on your side, it's actually even easier. And although, I mean, it's important. We got to be principled, right? We got to be principled, but you got to be able to play the politic game. You got to be able to beat them at their own game, because the thing is, they're hypocrites. And all you have to do is disingenuously, like, spit the same shit at them, but, like, you have the right ideas on your side and you actually stand for something, which is going to make them look even dumber. So I want to see more of that. And that doesn't mean being aggressive and angry. Like, it just means, like, turning some shit on their heads, like, oh yeah, Medicare for all who want it. Okay, that's great. What should we do for the 10 million people who just filed for unemployment? You know, like, they don't have an answer for that. The truth is, they literally don't have an answer for that. And so they're going to pivot, they're going to tone police, they're going to do shit that's just disingenuous. And so you have to play the games with them. You know, you have to play some of their dirty games while maintaining your principles and while maintaining the actual ideals that you hold and the ideas that you have and the policies that you are advocating for. You know, as long as you're not losing the moral integrity of those policies, I've got no problem with you playing some dirty politics. I really don't. I think at the end of the day, they're playing a really dirty game, and they're doing it in a way that, just for people who just aren't paying that much attention, they're going to fall for it. And they're not dumb people. Like, there's just too much shit to pay attention to. You know, these are smart people who just, like, maybe politics just isn't their thing, and so they're just not paying that much attention. And it's not their fault that the news isn't properly informing them. You know what I mean? Like, the news is exactly designed to be basically a stenographer for power. That's literally what it is. Like, if a powerful person says something to them, because they still want access to that powerful person, they're just going to say it and repeat it, and they're barely going to push back on it. And we've seen this time and time again. I mean, we saw this with Hillary Clinton. She was fed questions for the CNN debate. And we saw that we've been seeing this with Joe Biden. They never mentioned anything about the Tara Reid scandal where she was sexually assaulted by Biden. She was literally, like, you know, like, I'm talking like actual assaulted, like physically touching the vagina, all that. I don't really want to get into that. I highly recommend you guys look up those allegations, and you can kind of make the judgment for yourself. But to me, it seems very credible. And you're just never going to see mainstream media do any of that shit. And so when a lot of people who are too busy to really pay attention, to really do the investigation, who maybe don't know about the online left-wing political commentators that do exist and that do have decent platforms, but still not big enough yet to make a dent, you can't blame the voters. It's not the voters' fault. It's the media's fault for not properly educating them and not properly pushing. You know, they want access. They buried the story of Epstein because they didn't want to lose access to the crown, and they didn't want to lose access to Hillary Clinton. And, you know, and these are things that they make these calculations all the time. So you just have to be mindful that that these media powers are going to defend themselves, and these corporate structures are going to defend themselves, and the corporate structures have power over the media because they are the ones who fund the media's advertisements, which keep the lights on. And so it's not that the media people or the reporters are inherently evil or bad. They're just playing the game and they don't want to lose their funding. It's a self-interested thing. And they need to hold power accountable more. They do, and we need to hold them accountable for holding them accountable. But you got to understand the game that is being played, and you got to understand the power dynamics and who are the power players and who's got influence. And we need to put pressure on the people who have influence, and we just need to do it more strategically. And we've gotten closer in this election more than ever to accomplishing those things. And I think it is actually a really good sign for the future. It's frustrating it didn't happen this time. It would have been great to have gotten President Bernie Sanders in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, talk about the most perfect president for the moment, right? We're talking FDR coming around just in time for the Great Depression, right? That's what this is. Unfortunately, instead of choosing FDR, our people chose senile, creepy Joe, and it's unfortunate. I mean, he's literally just not the candidate for this moment. He's just not. He's a manager. He's not a fix a severely broken system. The system that, by the way, was broken before the pandemic. The pandemic just putting a flashlight on all of that. So I think this is a moment for us to reinvent this country. And although there are probably not enough good people in power to do it on the legislative scale, we can eventually, but we can start putting pressure in the labor side of things. I think it is important for us to focus on strikes. Like it or not, us staying home has showed us that we have all the power, dude. Guess who's an essential worker? You know what I mean? Guess who's actually the most important fabric of our society? It's the people that we barely pay fucking shit to. So knowing that is the power we have. If we just don't go to work, guess who's not getting paid their millions and billions of dollars? The fucking 1%. And so that's why they're like trying to get us to sacrifice ourselves for their fucking stock price. Like, just go back to work. It's fine that there's a virus. Risk your life. They're doing it because they want to, they want you to make the sacrifice for them. They don't give a fuck. That one dude who was quarantining on a yacht and then had a drone shot of the yacht and he posted it to Instagram or whatever. Like, fuck, dude. It's so out of touch, dude. That's so out of touch. And then the fucking, I know everybody's already talked about it, but the Imagine video, like, and I like some people in that video. It's nothing personal to them, but it's like, dude, just tone deaf. You're a celebrity. You're hanging out in a mansion. Unless you're physically doing something for people, just sit in your mansion, bro. You know what I mean? Like, and if you have something substantial to bring to the conversation of policy, even if you're a millionaire, then yes, by all means, then your voice is important. Your voice is important if what you're saying is important. But if what you're saying is just like you're singing a song in your mansion and you're quarantining in paradise, like, I'm sorry, it's just know that doesn't come across well in a country where wealth inequality is so high, But I guess these people live in bubbles. They just don't know. I don't think they're bad people for doing the video. I just think it's tone deaf. It's just tone deaf. What else? What else is there to cover? I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think what I've come to the conclusion of is that we need to, more than ever, we need to really start flexing our power as people. We need to start flexing our power against these people in power because they've shown they don't give a fuck. They're going to give you a $1,200 check only if they can give $4 trillion to Wall Street. That's literally like they won't give it to you otherwise. And the Republicans are likely to not want to give you anything else after this. Even though that $1,200 check maybe didn't even cover your rent if you live in certain places, or barely covers your rent and then doesn't give you enough money for food for the rest of the month. And they only want to give it to you once, and then this crisis is going to go on for several months. A third of people, I don't know if it was only in New York, if it was across the nation, but a third of people didn't make rent, And so the reality is that the economy is going to come to a complete and total collapse if they don't do something. So if they don't do it, it'll be their own undoing. I mean, then all the people who supported things that didn't help people, should have their heads on the chopping block for their, not literally have their heads on the chopping block, but have their heads on the chopping block for their position, for their spot in Congress. Anybody who doesn't support a bailout of the people and only supports a bailout of the corporations, I'm sorry, but you're canceled. You're canceled. And I think it's criminal that they all voted for that bill. I know that Bernie got some concessions, and that's the only reason why he voted for it. But I still feel like he just shouldn't have voted for it. I don't know. I still feel like he shouldn't have voted for it. And I think the fact that the House did it and then didn't even record the vote, so nobody can say where they stood, I think is also equally criminal. And that just goes to show you that there's too many people in Congress right now that are so bought and paid for that the few people who aren't know that it's just politically not even worth it to go against it. And that sucks, because I don't even want people having to make those calculations, because I want them to be able to stay principled. I get it. You got to be a little Machiavellian. Sometimes you're going to have to make some votes that maybe you don't really want to make. But I'm in favor of people being like the Bernie Sanders, the one person who didn't vote for it, or like the Barbara Lee for the war in Afghanistan. She was the only person was in the House, or I think. I can't remember if it was in the House or the Senate, that was the only person who voted against it. So I think it's important that we really just take into account that we, the people, have the power, that this economy doesn't move without us, and that these motherfuckers at the top, these rich assholes, and I'm talking about very specific people. When I say this, I don't want to demonize every millionaire in the world. Dude, plenty of millionaires are fine, right? There are plenty of millionaires who are good people. I'm talking about 1%ers. I'm talking about $100 billion of net worth and giving pennies. Dude, people who give oh, Bill Gates gave $20 million to whatever. Dude, do you know what his net worth is? $20 million is chump change to him. And by the way, we would get more public good if we just taxed him properly so that he wasn't a crazy billionaire. I think that's what people just don't understand, is that the money would be better allocated if we just tax them properly rather than relying on them to fundraise for charity. By the way, where are the billionaires in this whole thing? I've seen one billionaire during this whole coronavirus thing that actually did something significant, and that was Jack Dorsey of Twitter. He actually donated a third of his net worth. That's significant. To me, it's a dude who's only got $4 billion, and I say only because it's still an absurd amount of money, but only $4 billion relative to, $150 billion. Giving a third of it, that's huge. Whereas you got Bill Gates, who's way richer, giving way less. That goes to show you, dude, these people aren't going to save you. Your billionaires are not going to save you. Elon Musk gave people the wrong ventilators. I think people just need to stop having faith in rich people. Bro, just because they're rich doesn't mean they're good people. Doesn't mean that they're better people than you. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just doesn't mean that they're good people automatically. It doesn't mean that because somebody was successful financially that suddenly that they're better than you and that they earned it and they deserved it. No, when you get to be 100-something billionaire, that means you are stealing money in multiple aspects. You're stealing money from tax credits. You're stealing money from subsidies. So this is all taxpayer money. You're stealing money from your workers by not paying them adequate wages, because the whole point is that the only reason why you have a profit is that you're squeezing out as much as you can at various levels of your business to make that profit. And then if you personally are benefiting so much that you're able to accumulate that much wealth, I don't care what you invented. If you've accumulated that much amount of wealth, you're stealing it from people. I mean, you just are. You could be a millionaire and you're not really you're not stealing on the same level that a billionaire is. A billionaire truly is just thieving money from people. They didn't earn $1 billion. You only make $1 billion on the backs of who knows how many thousands of people. potentially millions of people, depending on the scale of it. So I just want more people to understand that. Like, dude, it's not, being rich is not an inherently bad thing. It's being grotesquely wealthy. It's having hundreds of billions of dollars. That is just like literally just unfair. I mean, if you just want to think about the democracy of things, do you really want a country that has somebody who is so wealthy that they could buy all of Congress, which by the way is cheaper than you'd think in terms of to buy a politician's opinions on something. But like to be able to buy all that single-handedly, their vote now becomes way more than one person's vote. And I think that that's what's so frustrating. It just is. I get it. Everybody wants to be that billionaire. Everybody wants, especially in America, we're just taught this fucking selfish, like me mentality here instead of a communal based, like we're a community, dude, like it or not. And you're finding this out now. Like we all rely on everybody, everybody's important here. Even the people who you think are unimportant, right? The grocery baggers, right? The people who everybody thought, whatever, anybody could do that, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, they're the most essential fucking workers right now. And those people are risking their lives in arguably one of the more, aside from hospitals themselves, one of the more dangerous places to have to be working right now during this pandemic. This is a place that everybody's got to go, whether they're sick or not. They got to go to the store to get food. Don't go to the store if you're sick, please. But you get what I'm saying. Like people are going to go and not know or be asymptomatic or whatever. And I think that this is a chance for us to truly understand our power and to shift that power dynamic to work better for the average person. And I think it's about time we start taking the money from the richest people in a way that we're not literally taking it. We're just going to change the tax code to more effectively tax them out of existence. Because with a progressive tax system, which means most of y'all motherfuckers listening are not going to be taxed any more than you already are, okay? With a progressive tax system, the more money you make, the more we start taking, but we only take it after a certain dollar amount. So, with the wealth tax, there's a percentage for a dollar amount, and it's after that dollar amount. So up to $25 million, you're taxed the normal whatever tax brackets, and then every dollar above that, you're taxed at then this percentage of that. And then if you bump up to another tax bracket, let's say 40 million or 50 million is the next one, then suddenly every dollar over that amount gets taxed at 3% or whatever the fucking number is. You can make up whatever numbers you want for it. And that is a way that you get billionaires out of existence while still allowing them to make absurd amount of money. It's still not going to make billionaires disappear. They're still going to be billionaires, but the idea is that you don't have somebody with $150 billion, which is an absurd amount of money that it's just gross, dude. But we can do it. I really do think we can do it. I think more and more of these ideas have become mainstream. Bernie has centered this platform in a way that truly we would not be talking about it if he didn't do it. We would be talking about some incrementalism bullshit that isn't going to get us where we need to go and that isn't going to do enough quick enough. We don't have the luxury of time. We really don't. We don't have the luxury of time anymore. We have a pandemic currently going on that's causing total economic collapse. We have climate change that is going to cause mass migrations of people where certain areas are going to become uninhabitable. There's not going to be clean water in certain areas, and you're going to have conflicts that are going to rise from that and migrations. And we need things to meet the moment. We need drastic changes in very specific policy areas. It's not in everything, but in very specific policy areas to meet the challenges that are going to arise. And with this internet, with this collective consciousness that we are slowly evolving towards, we are going to be able to meet that moment if we have the political will to do it. We certainly have the means. We certainly have the technology. We certainly have the people and the resources, but we don't have the political will, and we don't have the levers of power working in our favor, because the left, or progressives, or whatever you want to call them, as a team is not as coordinated as the elite. They're just not. The elite has more money, they have more resources, and they are so steadfast and together in their goals. They have a solidarity. They have a class solidarity in a way that we don't. And it's frustrating because they've sowed the dissent. They want middle class and lower class and working class people. They want them to be infighting about shit that doesn't matter. And it's frustrating that we have that circumstance because we have more in common than they do. But they all get together and they defend their billions. They just do. They're just better at it. And I think we can be better at it, and we have more people. So we will outnumber them. And we already do outnumber them, but we will outnumber them when we start coordinating better. And that means that we have to make alliances with people on specific policy issues, whether you like them or not. I've said this before, but like there might be somebody who you despise on the right, but if they have a good idea about one policy, I'm sorry, we gotta be like, all right, cool, come vote with us then, caucus with us, like work with us on this thing. We disagree on every other issue, but on this one we don't. So let's work with this and let's fucking do it. And I think we just need to get serious about it. We need to get real about acquiring power. We need to get real about strategy, and we need to get real about uniting people and using a messaging that is able to access the average person. Revolution sells to people like me, but revolution doesn't sell to somebody who's getting by, doing well enough, but wants healthcare. Like we just need to center these ideas in a way that it's like, no, this is the mainstream. Anybody who doesn't believe in this shit is fucking nuts. That's what we need to frame it as. And the facts are on our side. So it's just a matter of framing it properly and allowing us to control the dialogue and allowing us to control the conversation. And I think we can. So I want to leave you with an inspiring message that we can do this. We can use this opportunity to completely redefine what government does in America. And we can use this opportunity as hopefully a way to get Donald Trump out of office. I don't have high hopes for Joe Biden, dude. I don't. I think he sucks. I think he's one of the worst candidates we've seen in a long time. But at the same time, he's slightly better than Trump. And that's about as much as I can say. I can't argue for a single policy thing because he's wrong on virtually every policy in terms of what I want. But that being said, this pandemic might be enough to take Donald Trump down. So if that's the case, and we do get Joe Biden in there, I'm sure he's going to drop out of being a president almost immediately because his brain doesn't work. And whoever his VP is probably going to end up becoming the president, which is already extremely undemocratic. But, whatever. That's for another podcast. But stay healthy, stay safe, stay indoors. If you need to go out for a walk or whatever, as long as you can socially distance, wear a mask if you have one. Take all the proper precautions, limit your social circle, wash your hands, don't touch your face. I know I did in this podcast, but don't worry, my hands are clean. I washed them before this podcast. So just make sure that you take care of yourself. At the end of the day, we need you here. Unfortunately, this is going to put a lot of pressure on people who already didn't have much left. And I really want people to understand that, like, we need to be there for each other. Now more than ever, we need to be community driven. We need to think about our brothers and sisters. We need to think about our neighbors and think about our fellow Americans and even our fellow immigrants as well. I think we just need to realize that we have more solidarity and things in common than people think. I just think we have a lot. We have a lot that really unites us, and I think that this will be a chance to really unite us, hopefully, in a way that actually enacts meaningful change in our society. So sorry about not posting for the last couple of weeks. I was a little busy with work, being a little crazy, and also trying to figure out how to plan my schedule and everything. But yeah, I got I'll drop my episode with Marcus next week. And make sure to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. I post clips to Instagram. I post clips to Facebook. Obviously, here on the YouTube channel, I have all my snippets that are there as well. So be sure to check out all of that stuff. And maybe I'll start dropping some videos outside of the podcast for specific topics or things I want to cover that maybe aren't worth an entire podcast. I've been kind of playing around with that idea. We'll see. I got more time now, so I'll try to coordinate some of that stuff. But thank you all for listening. I appreciate it. You guys are all my heavy mommies, and together we're going to get through this coronavirus, and I'm going to do my best to try to inspire you and get you through it for as much as I can. And, stay together, people. We're in this together. This is a human problem.